What are the key skills for a front-end developer? Key skills include HTML, CSS, JavaScript, understanding of responsive design, experience with front-end frameworks like React or Angular, and knowledge of version control systems like Git. What's the difference between class and id in HTML? An id is unique to a single element, while a class can be applied to multiple elements. Ids are used for unique identifiers, and classes are used for styling groups of elements. How do you ensure your web applications are accessible? I follow the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines (WCAG) by using semantic HTML, providing alt text for images, ensuring proper color contrast, and testing with accessibility tools. Can you explain what a CSS grid is and how it differs from Flexbox? CSS grid is used for two-dimensional layouts, rows and columns, while Flexbox is primarily for one-dimensional layouts, row or column. Grid is great for complex layouts, while Flexbox is ideal for simpler designs. What is the purpose of useEffect in React? UseEffect is a hook that allows you to perform side effects in a functional component, such as data fetching, subscriptions, or manually changing the DOM. How do you optimize the performance of a web application? I optimize performance by minimizing file sizes, using lazy loading, optimizing images, implementing server-side rendering, and reducing JavaScript execution times. Explain the difference between == and == in JavaScript. == checks for equality after type conversion, whereas == checks for strict equality without type conversion. What is REST API and how do you use it in front-end development? REST API is a set of rules for creating web services. In front-end development, it's used to interact with back-end services via HTTP requests to fetch, update, or delete data. What is the box model in CSS? The box model consists of margins, borders, padding, and the content. It defines the layout of elements in a web page. How do you manage state in a React application? I use React's built-in hooks like useState and useReducer for managing state locally. For global state management, I might use Context API or libraries like Redux. What's the difference between synchronous and asynchronous JavaScript? Synchronous JavaScript executes code line by line, blocking further execution until the current task is completed. Asynchronous JavaScript allows other tasks to proceed while waiting for previous ones, often using callbacks, promises, or async, await. What are some ways to make a website mobile-friendly? I use responsive design techniques such as flexible grids, media queries, and responsive images. Additionally, I ensure that the site is touch-friendly with larger buttons and a simplified layout. What is cross-origin resource sharing CORS and why is it important? CORS is a security feature that allows or restricts resources requested from another domain outside the origin. It's crucial for controlling access to resources and preventing security vulnerabilities. How do you use version control in your projects? I use Git for version control. I create branches for new features, commit changes with descriptive messages, and perform pull requests to merge changes into the main branch after review. What's the purpose of media queries in CSS? Media queries are used to apply different styles for different devices or screen sizes. making a website responsive and adaptable to various viewports. Explain how you would optimize a website's loading speed. I would minimize HTTP requests. Use lazy loading for images. Compress files. Leverage browser caching. And reduce JavaScript, CSS file sizes by minifying and combining them. What are the main differences between Angular, React, and Vue.js? Angular is a full-fledged MVC framework. React is a library focused on the UI. And Vue.js is a progressive framework that is lightweight and easy to integrate. Each has unique features and strengths. What is CSS specificity and how does it work? CSS specificity is a weight that determines which style is applied to an element when multiple styles conflict. It's calculated based on inline styles, IDs, classes, and element selectors. What are pseudo-classes in CSS? Pseudo-classes are used to define the special state of an element, such as hover for mouse hover, focus for focus state, and nth child for selecting specific children of an element. How do you handle browser compatibility issues? I use modern CSS resets. Test on different browsers. Apply vendor prefixes if needed. And use tools like BrowserStack to ensure compatibility. What is a single-page application SPA? An SPA is a web application that loads a single HTML page and dynamically updates content as the user interacts, without refreshing the entire page. It provides a faster and smoother user experience. What is the Document Object Model DOM? The DOM is a programming interface for web documents. It represents the structure of an HTML or XML document as a tree of nodes, which can be manipulated with JavaScript to update the page content dynamically. How do you implement responsive design for a website? I use a combination of flexible grids, media queries, and relative units like percentages or em. Additionally, I test the layout across various screen sizes to ensure a consistent user experience. What are some common challenges you face as a front-end developer? Common challenges include browser compatibility, performance optimization, handling complex states in single-page applications, and keeping up with rapidly changing technologies. What is the difference between let, var, and const in JavaScript? Var has a function scope. Let and const have block scope. Const is used for constants, while let is used for variables that can change within a block. What are some tools you use for debugging JavaScript? I use browser developer tools like Chrome DevTools, console logging, and sometimes dedicated tools like Postman for testing APIs. What's the purpose of using CSS preprocessors like Sass or Less? CSS preprocessors allow you to use variables, nested rules, mixins, and functions, making CSS more maintainable and easier to write. How do you handle errors in JavaScript code? I handle errors using try, catch blocks, proper error messaging, and use tools like error tracking services e.g. Sentry to catch and analyze errors. What is this keyword in JavaScript? The this keyword refers to the object it belongs to. In a method, this refers to the owner object, while in a regular function, it refers to the global object unless in strict mode. What are web components? Web components are a set of standardized APIs that allow developers to create reusable custom elements with their own encapsulated functionality, separate from the main document. What is lazy loading and why is it used? Lazy loading is a design pattern that delays the loading of non-critical resources until they are needed. It's used to improve initial loading times and save bandwidth. How do you test front-end code? I use testing frameworks like Jest, Mocha, or Jasmine for unit testing. I also use tools like Selenium or Cypress for end-to-end testing to ensure the UI behaves as expected. What are web accessibility best practices? Best practices include using semantic HTML, providing all the attributes for images, ensuring sufficient color contrast, using ARIA roles, and making forms accessible. What are ES6 features you frequently use? I frequently use arrow functions, template literals, destructuring, spread, rest operators, let const, and promises. These features make the code more concise and readable. What is Redux and when would you use it? Redux is a state management library for JavaScript apps. I use it when I need a predictable state container for managing complex state across multiple components. What is CORS and how do you handle it? CORS cross-origin resource sharing is a security feature that restricts web applications from making requests to a different domain than the one that served the web page. I handle it by configuring server headers or using proxy servers to allow cross-origin requests when necessary. What are the pros and cons of using a CSS framework like Bootstrap? The pros include faster development, consistent styling, and a responsive grid system. The cons are limited design flexibility and the possibility of having a website that looks like many others using the same framework. What is Webpack, and why would you use it? Webpack is a module bundler for JavaScript applications. I use it to manage dependencies, bundle JavaScript files, and optimize assets like CSS and images, which improve the performance and loading time of the website. What is the difference between equals equals and equals 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 in JavaScript? Equals equals is the loose equality operator that compares values after type coercion, while equals 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 is the strict equality operator that checks both value and type without coercion. How do you optimize a website's performance? I optimize by minimizing file sizes, using lazy loading, optimizing images, implementing code splitting, caching assets, reducing HTTP requests, and using a content delivery network CDN. What is the Shadow DOM? The Shadow DOM is a web standard that enables encapsulation in web components, allowing developers to isolate the internal structure of an element from the rest of the page. What is a closure in JavaScript? A closure is a function that retains access to its lexical scope, even when the function is executed outside that scope. It's commonly used for data privacy and state management in JavaScript. How do you manage state in a React application? I use React's built-in use state and use reducer hooks for local state. For global state, I use libraries like Redux or Context API to manage complex state across components. What are higher-order components Hawk in React? Hawks are functions that take a component and return a new component, enhancing its behavior or adding additional props. They are used for code reuse in React applications. What is the virtual DOM and how does it work? The virtual DOM is an in-memory representation of the actual DOM. React updates the virtual DOM first, then compares it with the real DOM to update only the changed elements, improving performance. What are React hooks? React hooks are functions like useState, useEffect, and useContext that allow developers to use state and other React features without writing a class. Component. What is BEM in CSS and why use it? BEM block, element, modifier is a naming convention for CSS classes that helps keep code organized and modular. It improves code readability and reusability by creating a clear structure. What are CSS Grid and Flexbox? CSS Grid is a two-dimensional layout system for complex web layouts, while Flexbox is a one-dimensional layout model for distributing space along a single axis. Both help in creating responsive layouts. What are some SEO best practices for front-end development? SEO best practices include using semantic HTML, optimizing images, ensuring fast loading times, using meta tags, creating accessible content, and implementing proper heading structures. What is a service worker and how does it work? A service worker is a script that runs in the background of the browser, intercepting network requests, caching resources, and enabling offline functionality. It enhances the performance and reliability of web applications.